Our dear friends and neighbors, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Republican Club of Heritage Ranch, it is my honor to wish you a warm welcome and greetings, and we think we have a great meeting for you tonight. We hope you enjoy it. We've worked hard to make it a pleasant experience. So one of the things we do is after each meeting we seek to learn what you think about our meetings and what we can do to improve. So we've made some adjustments that I hope you see tonight. They are things that you told us you'd like to see us change or improve upon. One of the things that you've always asked us to do, and that is to make certain that the meeting is over with before 8:30, and that's going to happen. So we listen. So I always try to get our board members up in front of you so you can see who they are, and if you have questions, if you have suggestions and ideas on what we can do better, you can either send us an email on our web account, or you can catch one of our board members or myself. We'd love to hear from you. We want to just keep making things better. So with that, we will have the introduction of the pledges. I've asked Ted Puchas, our past president, to preside over the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, at this point, we would like to ask our elected officials to, if they would, just kind of make their way to the side aisle and come up around the front. I think where Ben is standing right there, he'll give you the microphone, and just introduce yourself to our membership, please.
Good evening, my name is Henry Lester, I'm your mayor. Thank y'all for your support out here. I just want to thank the Republican Club out here, all those folks. I mean, I deal with a couple of them, and I know how much time they put into this, and Mr. Brown over here especially. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Howdy, I'm Larry Little, and I'm on the Fairview Town Council, and I agree with Henry. Y'all are a great group out here, and we really do appreciate y'all's support. Keep up the good work.
Hi everybody, I am not an elected official. Last year I was your Collin County Victory Director for all the Republicans here, and this year I'm here on behalf of Congressman Van Taylor, so appreciate y'all having me and look forward to working with you once again.
Good afternoon, my name is Sammy Knapp. I'm Constable Precinct 3, Collin County here, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to participate. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to introduce another board member. Everybody knows Ben Brown. He's in charge of our legislative team. Very large team. They do a lot of work for us. So, Ben. Thank you, Jack. You have the clicker.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to talk very briefly, because I don't want to spoil your dinner, about the Texas legislature and some of the efforts that our club made during this recent regular session of the 87th legislature. The legislative session ended May 31st, and they had two things they had to do according to the Constitution. One is to pass a budget, and secondly, they had to address redistricting. They did pass a budget. It's a very conservative budget. It only increases state revenues less than 1/10 of 1%. Now that's a big number, $237 million. but that's a very conservative increase. In the budget, education is fully funded. There was some question about whether education, there'd be enough dollars to fully fund education this time. They found the money and did it. It provides $1 billion for border security. And one of the things it does, for the first time ever, the legislature has imposed a cap on spending for future budgets. So they're not going to jump out there and increase spending by redistricting had to be postponed because the U.S. Census does not have the data ready. It will be ready in September. We'll talk about that in a minute. They started with a little over 6,700 bills, ended up passing 1,073 bills. As of this afternoon, Governor Abbott has vetoed one bill. He has signed 498 bills. He has some more work to do. They also passed 8 joint resolutions, and what that means, there will be 8 constitutional amendments on the November ballot, and we'll be talking more about those as we get closer to election time. There it goes, it works. What did they accomplish? I'm not going to tell you what they did other than just the budget and some things. The Texas House Caucus has put together a very good report. I've seen a copy of it. It's supposed to be posted on their website. It's not as of this afternoon. When it's posted there, we'll send the link out by an email or let everybody know how they can link up and see all the other accomplishments in this 1,073 bills they passed. Or, if you don't want to read the report, come back in November. Senator Paxton and Representative Noble will be our featured speakers if they're not in special session at that time. Yes. Jack says come back before November. Don't wait till November to come back. What did our club do during the special session? We had a team of folks that sent emails, made phone calls, attended Zoom meetings from the beginning of the session to the end of the session. These are the folks that worked on the election, on the priority legislation throughout the session. And some of them are here tonight, some of them aren't, I know, because a couple of them have some family issues. I'm going to ask each of them to stand because they did outstanding work. Jane Fuller, Jane, I know you're here, stand up. Keep standing. John Sepchik, Will Lace. Sandra's not here, I don't believe. Jack is having some health issues. Liv Schad, I haven't seen her. Gary Whiteman's over here. Kathy Gonzalez, I know Kathy's here. Stand up, Kathy. Mark Wood is in Iowa right now. Joanne Cameron. Michelle Duke. Michelle, stand up. George and Barbara McClure were sending emails from Pennsylvania to the Texas legislature. So I want to personally thank these guys and gals. They did yeoman's work. It was work. But we did get the attention of our legislators during this session. So thank you, each one of you, and their team. There will be a special session. Matter of fact, the governor has announced there will be 2 special sessions, one in the fall to address redistricting, and oh, by the way, they will address the $16 billion of unfunded COVID relief funds. And you don't think the special session won't be fun when the legislators will be battling over their boundaries and also $16 billion. Prior to that, the governor said he will have a special session where he will address election integrity, bail reform, and potentially other items. And that's the one that everybody's worried about right now. What are those other items, and then when will the special session happen? You'll just have to stay tuned for the answer to that. So, to conclude, thanks to our legislative team for their work, and special thanks to our legislators. Every time I looked at a session of the legislature, which you could watch online, somewhere in the background was one of our representatives in the Senate or on the House floor. They were doing yeoman's work behind the scenes and also with their own bills, getting them passed as well. So thanks to them. And that's my brief session. If you will please stand, we will have an invocation. Heavenly Father, only you know what the future holds. But we come tonight expressing our confidence in you and our confidence in the democracy that we have, in our republic that's so revered. We pray for those foundational beliefs that are under attack right now. Give us the courage to stand and make our voices heard and be effective. We thank you for this gathering tonight, for our friends, our like-minded Republicans. We thank you for each one. We thank you for our efforts together, and may we honor you in what we do. Now bless our food to the nourishment of our bodies, and our bodies to your service. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. And now you may be seated and enjoy your dinner.
Joan heads up our program planning team, so we ask her to present our speaker for you.
Tonight we have another exciting program. It's already sitting there in front of you. At the end of our meeting tonight, you'll find out what we're doing next month, and we have some good programs on the horizon, so I hope you'll come back for more. Tonight we're going to hear from Pam Little, who is she's on the State Board of Education, and she will be telling us what the State Board of Education does, and also, hopefully, will answer to the critical race theory. You can't turn on any kind of a program these days, at least not on Fox, I don't know about the other stations, that don't dwell upon the critical race theory, as in Loudoun County, Virginia, and many other places. Anyway, a little bit about Pam. Residing in North Texas for more than 30 years, Pam Little, who represents District 12 on the State Board of Education, is a business owner and an active community volunteer. Along with her husband Larry, who is also here tonight, her husband of 45 years. She is the co-owner of Ace Fence of DFW, which started 40 years ago in their garage and has blossomed out to be one of the largest fence companies in the Dallas Metroplex. Pam Little, a Republican, was first elected to the State Board of Education in November 2018. She serves as the vice chair of the board and on the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, very important committee, which oversees such areas as the curriculum, instructional materials, gifted and talented education, graduation requirements, and education for individuals with disabilities. A native Texan who grew up in Bryan College Station area, attended Texas A&M University and graduated from the University of Houston. She and her family have lived in the vineyards of Fairview for 20 years. Pam Little is an active community volunteer. She is an alumna of the Allen Fairview Leadership Class 24, a board member of a past board member of the Allen Fairview Chamber, the Samaritan Inn, and the past president of Texas Federation of Republican Women. She also has been on the executive board of Plano Rotary, the First Methodist Church of McKinney Finance Committee, and the Junior League Community Advisory Board. She has also served on the Fairview Town Council. Pam Little served as a community college instructor and teaching courses in small business management. She has worked in educational publishing, retiring as a regional vice president of Houghton Mifflin Publishers in 2008. Pam is the mother of 2 children, both married and living in the McKinney area. She and her husband are grandparents for 3 grandsons. As a member of the State Board of Education, and she will be pointing this out to you, Pam Little represents the citizens of Collin County and a part of Dallas County. So without hesitation, let's give a warm welcome to Pam Little.
Can y'all hear me? Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Joan. And one thing I would like to add to that, we are excited to announce that we have a granddaughter on the way. And Larry has told me I can buy her anything I want after 3 grandsons. And I know that's one of the reasons that you're here tonight, is we're very concerned about our grandchildren. You know, we've raised our children, but, you know, we don't want to see what's happening around the world for our grandchildren. So, first of all, let me tell you, I am honored to represent you. I love serving on the State Board of Education, and I love talking about it, but I will limit my time, okay? Because I could probably go all night on this. So, let's get started. And the first thing I'm going to start with is this really hot topic of the critical race theory. And it's like Joan said, you know, you can't turn the TV on without hearing about it. And I want to tell you sort of what's going on in Texas with it. During our legislative session, we had several bills that were filed. As Ben pointed out, there were over 6,000 bills filed. And there were several of them that addressed critical race theory, keeping it out of our schools. And then there were also a move to improve civics education, and there were some bills along those lines. So somewhere along the way, those 2 bills got mixed together, and we ended up with one bill, House Bill 3979. And as I checked later this afternoon, and I don't know, Ben, you may have more, the governor has not yet signed it. And maybe he's going to wait and make a big publicity thing about that. But one of the concerns that we had, the State Board of Education had about this bill, was it really didn't do the job we needed it to do. In the first place, because it started out as a civics bill, it only applied to the social studies standards. And then as we started looking at it a little closer, we thought, well, educators may be able to interpret that as just a 612 application to social studies. And then the one thing that we as the state board wanted to see in that bill is we wanted to have training for social studies teachers. As you know, our teachers coming out of colleges with a lot of the liberal professors, and they don't really understand bias. And that was one of the things that we wanted to be sure that was included, was that we made sure that there was training in there for the teachers. So what happened? The bill, it became House Bill 3979. It got circulated around, and then we got involved. Well, actually, one of my colleagues, Ms. Hardy, who is a 30-year veteran of social studies education, saw this bill, and she said, guys, this is not going to do it. And she garnered some support from the Texas Federation of Republican Women, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and we went to the Lieutenant Governor And we told the Lieutenant Governor, this bill is not going to do it. We actually had a conference call with him. He agreed. He had his staff rewrite the bill and offer amendments. It passed the Senate. Great. It got to the House on May the 22nd. It sat in the House for 6 days. And as a result, that gave the Democrats time to find a loophole in that bill. So that bill was not passed. So in an effort just to be sure that they had something passed, they went back to the original bill. And like I said, it's better than nothing, but it doesn't really do the job. And just to show you, this is, and I know you can't read this, but this is the letter that Ms. Hardy sent to the legislators saying, we need this in here. And one of our pet peeves on the State Board of Education is when the legislators start to do legislation that deals with education, they never consult us. If they had come to us and said, hey, we want to do this bill, we would have done this in the beginning, and we wouldn't be sitting here with a bill that does half the job. And the reason that I say it does half the job, let's say you're a language arts teacher, and you just taught a poem about Langston Hughes, and you're teaching about the Harlem Renaissance. That's a perfect segue into the critical race theory through your language arts. So that's why we are hoping, if the governor does sign it, that we've had a lot of people call him and say this isn't going to do it. Hopefully that may be one of the other possibilities that the governor will bring back in the special session, because we've got to get a stronger bill or we're going to see it creep in. So that's where we are in Texas with the critical race theory. What I want to see us do is to create standards from which we can build a community of civic-minded young people who recognize the exceptionalism of both our state and country. Every race, religion, gender, and nationality will be treated fairly, equally, and with justice. And that is my goal as we look towards these social studies standards, which, by the way, we will start working on in November. So this is pretty much the critical race theory. I'm going to come back to the social studies as I go through what we're doing in different curriculum areas. And what I'd like to do now is talk to you about the State Board of Education. So many people have no idea what we do. I get calls from parents saying, why is the school district doing this to my child? Vote for this bill. I can't do anything in either of those. I don't have any legislative authority, and I have no authority, jurisdiction over a local school district. We are a 15-member board representing 15 districts. We're 9 Republicans and 6 Democrats. And we used to be 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats. And with the last election, we lost a strong, strong conservative voice in the form of Ken Mercer to a very liberal Texas State professor. So and we have 1 Republican that sometimes tends to vote with the Democrats. So it's really scary right now what's going on the board. And we are in District 12. Collin County is District 12. Oops, let me go back. I want you to see this map, because this is the map of the state of Texas. And with 15 of us, that means we represent almost 2 million people, each one of us. And that's about 1 million more than your state senator represents. So if you look on your ballot, we will be above the state senators, which is kind of fun, a little piece of information. But the other thing to note about this is when you see the purple up there, and then you see the gold down in the Rio Grande Valley, that represents 3/5 of the geography, but only 2/15 of the population. So we have a situation in Texas where, trying to get representation by population creates some very wide geographic districts. This is our district, and I have the smallest geographic district of all the state board members, which I love having. And as you can see on that map, I represent quite a bit of Dallas County. And where the lines are on the Dallas County, that's the part of our district that's in DISD. And oops, I'm not getting quite the touch on this bill. Good? Okay. One of the things that is going to be really important as we look at redistricting, I need to get rid of some of Dallas County. I don't know if you know this or not, but I barely won last time. I won by maybe 1.5%. But part of the problem was I also had a Libertarian in the race. So there were 3 of us in the race, and that Libertarian got about 2%. So what I'm hoping to do is to lose about 1/3 of what I have in Dallas County, pick up Rockwall County, pick up Grayson County, and pick up Cook County. And that's the plan that we have submitted for redistricting, and hopefully that will happen. We've got our fingers crossed, and most of the time they don't pay much attention to us as state board people, so I'm hoping that they'll be happy that we've already done it for them. Our chair this year is Dr. Kevin Ellis. He is appointed by the governor and serves a 2-year term and is eligible for a second 2-year term. I was so honored to be elected as the vice chair by my colleagues. I just started that position in January, and I'm happy to say my colleagues are thrilled with the way I run the meeting because I get things done. So it was rewarding to hear that. Our secretary is Gina Perez out of El Paso, and she has served for secretary for several years. We meet 5 times a year in Austin, which I know is sort of a weird thing. I don't know why we don't meet every other month or every other quarter or something like that, but that's what we meet. We have a meeting coming up starting June the 22nd, so I'll be heading to Austin on Monday to stay down there for the week. We're made up of 4 committees. We have a committee of the full board, Committee of Curriculum Instruction, which is where I serve. We have a permanent school fund committee and a committee on school initiatives. And I'll give you a little bit of information on each one of those as we go through this. And so many people think that the Texas Education Agency, which is many times referred to as TEA, is under the State Board of Education. And that is not true. The commissioner is appointed by the governor to serve a 4-year term. And Mike Morath, who is our current commissioner, was just reappointed, I think, about a year ago to serve another 4 years. Commissioner Morath's background is he was a school board member in DISD, and he has bought and sold technology companies. He's a really smart guy. The problem that I have about the commissioner being appointed by the governor is that he's not elected. We elect our land commissioner, we elect our agricultural commissioner, but for some reason we don't elect our commissioner of education. And I think this gets into a little bit of a problem when the legislature keeps handing so much power to the commissioner. There's no elected body that oversees him other than the governor, who, he's got a lot of things on his plate. So when the legislature crafts legislation and they direct the commissioner to do something, I wish they would put language in there that says the State Board of Education directs the commissioner to. And then that way, if something doesn't work right or residents aren't happy, they have an elected body that they can come to and voice their concerns. We work in committees. We have a committee of the full board, and like I said, the other committees that we have. Most of our work is done with standards. We work with the standards, which we call the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and that's where we do a lot of our work. We also work with the Permanent School Fund. We have a veto over charter schools that the commissioners recommended. We do graduation requirements. And of course, I know you've heard over the years the battles over instructional materials. The state board always seems to make the news as we're starting to approve instructional materials. And I want to give you a little bit of feedback on that as I go forward here. These are the curriculum areas that we've been working in recently. The English Language Arts, K-12, we just approved new standards for those that went into the classroom of 2019. And of course, the COVID hit right after that, so it's hard to really measure if these standards have been successful or not. We just redid the health standards, K through 8 and high school. One thing that really disappointed me is that health is not a required course in high school. The only required course for health is in 8th grade. And I think that's a problem. I think, you know, living a healthy life and mental health issues are extremely important today. Career and technology, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but that's a very exciting field to me. How many of you remember SHOP, home ec, auto mechanics? That's what we're going back to, and we've got a ton of opportunities for our students with that. We've also, we just approved the high school TEKS, biology, chemistry, physical science, environmental science. And one of the things that I want you to know is we had to fight to keep social justice out of science standards. Yeah. So that's why, you know, that's why it's real important that Collin County is not represented by somebody from Dallas, because that would not have happened. And it's just amazing to me that anybody would want to put social justice in science. And coming up next on for our evaluation is going to be the K-12 social studies. And you can imagine what all we're going to hear about that. And then next is math. And I've got some more things to say about math here in just a minute. When I first got on the board, my goals were to get students ready to learn, which means they need to be reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Because after 3rd grade, that's how you learn, is by reading. Up until then, you learn how to read. But if you're going to learn anything else, you've got to read to do it. And then my other part of that is ready to earn. And that comes through with the career and technology. I firmly believe that not every student in Texas is a college-bound student. And we absolutely must have an education system that can do something for these kids so that they can go out and earn a living with a high school degree. So, with my goal of having students reading on 3rd grade level by the 3rd grade, you can imagine how devastated I was at the first board meeting when the commissioner shows us this slide that only 43% of our 3rd graders are reading on grade level. And not only was it 43%, it dropped 2%. So this became a really big challenge for me, and as you can see, math was just slightly better. So I started thinking, okay, what can we do to get these students on grade level by the 3rd grade? And here are some things that I think will help tremendously. First thing is these new language arts TEKS that went into the classroom in 2019 are phonics based. Why did we ever get away from that? You know, we've had whole language, we've had balanced literacy, and for those of you who are in education, you know, sometimes education strategies, theories sort of chase their tail. How many of you remember when your children probably went into the open concept of a classroom? Yeah, they started putting those walls back in pretty quick. So that's kind of, I don't understand why we didn't have phonics, but phonics is back in there. You will also be happy to know that cursive writing is back as a part of the curriculum. Starting at the 3rd grade. The other thing that the legislature came up with for us is reading academies to teach teachers the science of reading. And I think that's going to help tremendously. Teaching reading is not using leveled readers, it's not balanced reading, it's working with phonics, sight words, those kinds of things. And we now have reading academies in place in the state to teach our students, teach our teachers about the science of reading. And this is something that is really near and dear to my heart, and that's to rework the reading passages in the STAR test. And I know STAR test has a lot of problems, but we will always have a high stakes accountability test. And as I looked at that and I thought, well, why are our 3rd graders not reading on grade level? So I went and I pulled the STAR test for 3rd grade. And as I read over those reading passages, one of the things that I discovered, one of the reading passages was how to build a sandcastle. Now think about that, all of you who built a sandcastle, you almost need some prior knowledge of the beach and understand wet sand. Now think about the geography in Texas. How many of our students, especially our lower socioeconomic students, have probably never been to a beach, don't have a clue about a sandcastle? So the commissioner and I started having a conversation about this, and he said, well, maybe what we need to do is we need to get the reading passages on whatever high-stakes test we have to come from the science and social studies that they have been taught up through 3rd grade. That's going to be great because for one reason, it's going to level the playing field. All students will have been exposed to the same content. But secondly, and for me, and by the way, my major was social studies. Secondly, for me, that's exciting, that means the teacher's going to have to teach social studies at K through 5. You know, they can no longer give it a lick and a promise and move on. They're going to have to actually dig in on that content. Same thing with science. And so as we are reworking our K through 8, or particularly K through 5, we are looking at embedding reading strategies into those standards, and we will do the same thing for social studies. So I think, to me, that's going to be a huge improvement in our scores. HB3 had a lot of emphasis for pre-K, so that's going to be good. I think our students are going to come in more ready than they have in the past. And then another part of HB3 was it's now required screening for dyslexia for every kindergarten and 1st grader. Because we find dyslexia can really impede the reading in our students, and unfortunately so many times we don't find it until it's too late. So when I stand up here in front of you in a couple of years, I'm hoping I can say, look, we improved our reading scores and this is why. So that's something that I work on. And math is only slightly better than reading. Kathy Gonzalez, I know you're in here somewhere as a former math teacher. And math is different now, and I know some of you have sent me the article from the Wall Street Journal where it says if you find the right answer, that's racist. I think Mayor Lessner sent me that article out of the Wall Street Journal, and evidently in California, that's what the California State Board is moving to implement in their math program. And that really doesn't surprise me because in Texas, our state board is elected. In California, it's appointed by the governor. So it's going to reflect what he wants. So I had a parent send me this, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it's just hysterical. I don't know if you can, how much you can see, but what we do now to solve this problem, 312 times 23, you draw a box. And you put the hundreds, and you put the tens, and you put the ones, and then you do it for the second thing that you're going to multiply for, and then you add it all up, and then you get an answer. And this parent sent me this, and they said, before COVID, this is how they did it. After COVID, they do it the way we know how to do it. And I love it. She said, after being homeschooled by an essential employee, hashtag, I don't have time to learn anything new. So I do have a big concern about our math teachers. They're kind of what I call fuzzy math, meaning that you're focused more on the thinking of math than the actual computation. The other part of math is what I would call drill and kill, where all you do is just worksheet after worksheet after worksheet. As we start to look at the math, I'm going to be looking for a nice blend between the two. I would definitely want them to have computational skills, but they also need the critical thinking that goes into that math as well. Oh, and this is really exciting to me. And Jack, one of the things that y'all might want to look at as a club is to go tour some of these technology centers that the districts have implemented now. I toured the one, I haven't toured the one at Lovejoy, but I toured the one in Garland. I was absolutely amazed at what we are offering our students today. And one of the new energy clusters one of the new clusters that we just approved was energy. And this means that our students are going to learn how to manipulate the computers or run the computers that run the wells. And with Texas being an energy state, I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity for them to use those skills. I also saw robotics, motorcycle repair, fashion design, veterinary technicians, pharmaceutical technicians, just about every health field that you could want. And it's my hope and prayer that with these kinds of courses, we can end that generational poverty. It's got to be a lot more exciting to go work on a motorcycle than just lay around on a couch, I would think. So that's our goal in that, and that's how I'm going to get get the Texas students ready to earn. And by the way, we have 1,054 districts in this state and over 5 million students. So there's a lot of variation in what we need. Okay, let's come back to social studies. One of the things that people always say to me is, Pam, you've got to get us where they teach the Constitution, they teach the founding documents, they teach the Declaration of Independence. And I get a little frustrated, not that I don't disagree with them, but when you look at our standards, it's in there. The first thing that we do is we require every social studies class, K through 5, 6th grade is world culture, 7th grade is Texas history, all through high school, whether it's world geography or world history, to have a Celebrate America week. And most of the time the districts choose the week of Columbus Day to do this. And part of this is to understand the founding documents, and the end goal of this is to make our students appreciate American exceptionalism. So they're going to get it right here. Every social studies student will get it once a year here. Then when you look at 7th grade, we talk about the Texas Constitution and how it works. And if you'll notice that it says 13, government, every one of our social studies essential knowledge and skills have a government strand in it. And this is where they actually learn about the government. And we parallel the Texas Constitution with the United States Constitution. Then in 8th grade history, once again, this is what I call 8.15D, which is on the Constitution. It's on the founding documents. And they'll do the same thing for high school history. I didn't include all those slides because I figured y'all get the idea here. And we do it in government. So I started asking myself, I said, well, if this is so embedded in our standards, why are students not understanding it? So I went and I pulled the 8th grade social studies test. Out of 44 questions, there was only one question on 8.15. Now, remember I said we have strands. We have government, we have history, we have culture, we have geography, we have sociology. So what that's telling me is that we do not have enough questions on our test on government. So that's one of the things that I'm working on now, is that we need to at least move to 4 or 5 questions on government. And what happens is teachers will pull these release tests and they'll say, oh, look, there's just one question on the Constitution, so let's skip it and let's focus more on, there were 5 questions on culture, let's focus more on that. So I think, bad as you hate to admit it, they teach to the test. And so we need to make the test something that they will teach to. And the commissioner and I are working on beefing up the 8th grade social studies and the same situation in high school to help make sure that our teachers actually teach this. And you may be asking, well, how do you work these Texas essential knowledge and skills? They come up for review every so often. Usually it's an 8 to 10 year review. We have moved social studies up. We moved it ahead of math because we were wanting to be sure that we got reading strategies implemented into the K-5 social studies. And then the process, and this is why it's going to be so important that you have a conservative state board member. Because the process is, we first establish content specialists. And you need to be sure that your state board member picks somebody that's of the same mindset as you, and not go down to some liberal college and get a social studies content specialist. In fact, I'm looking right now for a conservative content specialist in social studies, so if you know of anybody, please let me know. And so that's the first step. We have our content specialist. And then we have, then we bring in teachers to actually do the writing. And sometimes we'll bring in industry specialists, particularly in science. We brought in several engineers to look at that, some lab people, things like that. So that's how we go through and revise our standards. And the other thing that's a part of this standard revision are public hearings. And by law, we have 2 public hearings every time we update the TEKS. And you can only imagine what our public hearing over the health TEKS was like. We started at 9 o'clock. Thankfully, it was on Zoom, so I was at home. We started at 9 o'clock in the morning and finished at 1 a.m. that morning. And 90% of them were telling us that abortion should be a form of birth control, that, you know, we needed to have gender identities in there. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And I really think that the liberal group was trying to get us to react so that they could publicize it. And thankfully, all the Republicans, we sat there, we politely listened, and nobody reacted, and then we voted the way we voted. Okay, let's talk about the STAR test. And I know, you know, when the STAR test first came out, I thought, oh, that's a better test because it's more critical thinking. But all of this high-stakes testing started in the Bush era with No Child Left Behind. And when I was in publishing, we used to call it No Child Should Be Left Untested. And we would create our materials for that. But these high-stakes tests have evolved over the years. There was tabs, and Nancy, I think I forgot one. I think I forgot teams up here. I know. There was tabs, there was teams, there was TOS, there was tags. And now we have the STAR test, which is the State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. And, you know, we tried to get the commissioner to suspend the STAR test this year with all the COVID issues, but we couldn't because President Biden would not issue a waiver to the states to do so. So while all of us were a little miffed with the commissioner, it was really President Biden that caused that issue because he refused to issue waivers to the states for their high-stakes testing. And if they didn't give the test, then they'd lose their federal money. One of the things that I would like to see us do with this test is to take more of a diagnostic approach. Let's give the students an assessment at the beginning of the year. Let's figure out what it is we want to teach them, and then let's give them an assessment at the end of the year and see what they've learned. And let's let that be our accountability, not a score for one day in time where the whole school has been shut down and created just a very strange atmosphere for our students. So that's one of my goals. I'll probably need to be reelected before I can work on that one because it's going to take a while for that to happen. But that's something that I really would like to see happen for our students, and it just makes so much more sense to do that. And I want to talk about instructional materials, and obviously being in educational publishing for 20 years, I know a lot about that. And like I said, you've probably heard about the State Board of Education on the news as we approve instructional materials. In 2011, there was Senate Bill 6 that drastically changed the way instructional materials were processed in the state. Prior to that, publishers would come with a program, the state board would approve it, and it had to have 100% of our standards, of our TEKS in it. And then publishing companies would go share the samples with the districts, and then the districts would call the state, and they would say, state, we want to buy this program. The state would call the publisher and tell the publisher to ship it to that district, and then the state would send the money to the publisher. 2011 changed that. First of all, you only have to have 50% of the standards in the textbooks. And secondly, the money goes directly to the district, and they can buy anything they want to. They don't have to buy it off of the state list. So I think, and I have a feeling if you started looking at when our reading scores started dropping, it might be in 2011 when we changed that strategy for the instructional materials. And the other thing that did, you may have heard, well, Texas has a lot of influence in educational materials. After this change, they don't have the influence that they used to. What happens now is a publisher will take what they call a national edition, and they'll just sort of tweak it for Texas. And you know, it's easy with cut and pasting now. You can just cut and paste some things in, and it's not a whole new program with that philosophy in it. Now, thankfully, it's not going to be that bad with history, because those history books are already done, and let's face it, history's not, well, we hope they're not going to change it. That's something we have to work on. We don't want revisionist history in those books. But they're already been done, so they'll just be adding to that. So we may have caught a little bit of break in that. And when you look at a Texas edition and a California edition, Texas is a much more conservative edition. And I would really hope that we could continue with that. But that's a really big concern when they change that. And I think that may be part of our problem with our reading scores. The other big thing that the State Board does that you may have heard of is we have the fiduciary responsibility for the Permanent School Fund. And that fund is over $40 billion, with a B, billion dollars. It was, I think, in 1876, our state legislature set aside $1 million. You can imagine how much money that was back then, and gave this responsibility to the State Board, because what they wanted to do is they wanted to ensure that Texas would always provide instructional materials, textbooks back then, for our students. So that's why they provided that. And I know so many people have said, well, you know, why don't you just take some of it and give it to the state, or let the legislatures control it. We can't let go of that fund because of its purpose of being an intergenerational fund. And if we were to let the legislature get hold of that fund, it would be gone overnight. Now, what we do is we have formulas and percentages, and every year we give, or every biennium, we give the state money. And I think this past year we gave something like $1.6 billion to cover instructional materials and what is called the Available School Fund, so that schools do have extra money. And also, it provides collateral for school districts when they issue bonds. Not every school district will use it, but it does have that opportunity to provide those. Charter schools, I think charter schools, we started 26 years ago having charter schools in Texas, and one of the concerns that I have now with the charter schools, a lot of them are coming from out of state. They're coming from California, they're coming from New York, and I really think that they are bringing a liberal bias in their curriculum. And let me stop for a minute to explain the difference between standards and curriculum. If you were looking at that example I gave you of the Constitution and teaching the Constitution, one teacher may take the preamble of the Constitution and simply have her students memorize it. Another teacher may take that preamble and break it down into 3 phrases and have her students analyze it. So you can see the difference right there. And that's one thing as a state board member I don't have any say over. All I can do is issue this standard, and it is up to the district how they teach it. And that's why it's real important, if you're concerned about what your grandchildren are learning, ask to see the curriculum, because they can bring curriculum in from anywhere. And one of the things that we started hearing in about 2011 with textbooks for the social studies is it's like, oh, well, we just use it as a resource now. You know, in my day, my teacher opened the book on page 1, and when we got out of school on May 25th, we were at the end of the book. They don't teach that way anymore. And one of the things that's starting to scare me a little bit with social studies is they're sort of taking a thematic approach. Like one theme might be citizenship, another theme might be slavery, another theme might be capitalism. I don't agree with that approach. History's history, and I guess I'm a chronological girl. I want to see it chronologically taught and the implications from that. So those are some, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about those other things. But the concern about the charter schools, I think we need to, I mean, it's great to have school choice. I firmly believe in school choice because we don't want any students to be stuck going to a poor performing school. But at the same time, we don't want to have our students going to schools that are not what we would consider good schools. One school that we're looking at to approve now is an elementary school, and their superintendent has no elementary experience. The school that he went to help raise their scores, the school went from a D to an F. So you wonder, why are they hiring this guy as a superintendent? And I think as on the state board, that gives me reason to veto that school, because I don't think it's going to be successful with that leadership. So, that was an issue that came up. Ben, you may remember this, Senate Bill 28. The Lieutenant Governor thinks that we should approve every single charter school. And he tried to take that charter veto away from us. And he really hit a brick wall with that. So I'm hoping that we can do that. And I don't have a bias against charter schools. I have a bias against bad schools. And that's what I intend to work on, is always approving good schools. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee, one of the big things that we're going to be working on this time is dyslexia. Dyslexia right now, under Texas law, and Texas is probably one of the only states that has this, dyslexia is not classified as a federal learning disability. And what that means is that a lot of students don't get a full evaluation. So what we're going to be looking to do is to move the dyslexia, make it classified as a federal learning disability, and that will also enable more funds, and I think we'll catch learning disabilities with our students a lot sooner. And that's going to be a big issue. You may hear something about that on the news in a couple of weeks. The Permanent School Fund, I think I've already pretty much talked to you about that. And the Committee on School Initiatives, they're the first ones that hear the public hearings on the charter schools, and they do some other things as well. And then this is what we'll vote to approve. It's kind of funny, we meet first as a committee of the full board on Wednesday, and then on Friday we meet as the state board, and the committee of the full board makes recommendations to the state board. And when the state board votes on it on Friday, that is, etched in stone. Okay, I'm happy to have presented this to you. Do you have any questions?
Hello. Hello. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We haven't had open questions for over a year and a half, right? We couldn't pass the microphones. Remember then? It's all passed. So we can spend about 10 minutes. They have to be a question. This is not your time to give a little dissertation on what we should be doing or shouldn't. And Jack will take that side of the room and I'll take this side. Anything that pertains to whatever you think Pam can help us with is open. Okay, we have one here. Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Bork, Secretary of the Republican Club. You mentioned a lot of things about money, and you said a lot of things about federal money. My question to you is, can you tell us approximately how much of the dollar resources that are being used within the state of Texas are coming from the federal government? And number two, is there any way that we can possibly get rid of some of our dependence on the federal government for education?
Well, I'd have to research to get the number, and that's really not something that we, as a state board, that we oversee, is money. I would really like to limit our dependence on federal money. I mean, if we had not been so dependent on federal money, we could have waived the STAR test. But the government, our President Biden didn't do that. I don't know. I mean, it would mean a huge commitment on the state to cover the federal money, because right now a lot of the federal money comes in for the lower socioeconomics, provides for free lunches, care after school, things like that. So it's going to be a while before we can do that. But I understand the concern for sure.
We have a question here.
I'm Opal Bigham, and I like to know, what are some of the objections to CRT?
Well, the main objections are that it treats one race, it treats the white race differently. It demeans the white race because of what they have done with slavery. And the other thing that I haven't deeply researched it to know exactly what's in that, but the other thing too is that they say that it's Marxist. And I think maybe some of the, and Henry, you may can answer this, I think some of the founders of it were communist. And I think that's one of the big concerns about it, is they feel like it's got an underlying communist approach to it with, right, they pit people against each other. And that's why when you saw my statement, I want everybody to be treated equally, fairly, and with justice. And I don't want to see anything where we have one race, one gender, one religion, one nationality even that is selected or called out to be mistreated. That's not what we are as Americans.
Another question.
Who is responsible for writing the health education curriculum?
Okay, now there's a difference here between standards and curriculum. The State Board of Education wrote the standards. The school districts will determine the curriculum. And that means what instructional materials they use, what outside resources they use. That's all approved at the local level. And the way these TEKS work, they are to provide the bare bones approach. And what that means, and this is why as grandparents, parents, you have to be very cognizant of what's going on in a school district. Any school district can come in and add anything to those. And that's why we really need the law about critical race theory, because right now, if we don't have a law to keep them from doing that, if a school board approves it, it can be in our schools.
Pam, I have a question. Maybe you could clarify a little bit. We're going down locally now because our taxes go to Lovejoy, of course, and we have a very conservative area, so-called, here. And yet, what do we have to be careful of to maintain, or to, I should say, to prevent these modern woke kind of culture and critical race theory from creeping into the local schools, whether it be Lovejoy or Plano or any place else?
You need to really watch your local school board. But folks, honestly, the big problem is when a teacher closes the door, she can teach anything she wants unless she gets caught. So, I mean, you know, we've got a speed limit in Fairview of 50 miles an hour. If Chief Tolliver doesn't catch us, it's not going to be a problem. But, you know, if he's sitting there, he's going to fine us for it. So that's really the problem. And I think a lot of it just depends on, that's why if you see something that you see a teacher doing that you think is not right, you immediately need to call it to a school board's member's attention. Because these are things that we've got to stop. I mean, I had a call, and once again, this is not something that I can do, but I had a call from a parent in McKinney, and they were really concerned because their student was watching CNN every morning. That was what they went in to watch. And I told him, I said, you need to call Dr. McDaniel and talk to him about it. And Dr. McDaniel stopped that practice. So it's not, you know, I think basically at our school board level, we do have conservative people who want to do the right thing, who believe in American exceptionalism, who think that you know, America's the best place to live. But we just, sometimes they just may need a little reminding that, you know, this decision may keep that from happening. It may have unintended consequences.
We have a question here.
Is there a place in the school for social justice training and teaching?
I do think there is. I think teachers should be trained in it because we want it to be right. I mean, we want equal treatment. But I don't think that we need to have it in our science curriculum. I mean, I think maybe in our health teaks, we put in sexual bullying because we did not want, put a lot in with bullying. We put a lot in with human trafficking because we don't want to see those things happen. We want equal treatment for all students.
Hi, Pam. Lucy DiVirgilio. I have a question about charter schools. If you could give me a little clarification. I was under the impression that they followed the same guideline as most of our schools here, but I got the impression tonight that they did not, and you had some concerns. Could you clarify that for me?
They're supposed to. But let me tell you a little what happened with one of the schools that we were approving, and it was the Royal Academy. And we did some research, and they had gotten a grant for the Race to the Top money, which was the Obama Common Core, and they had gotten a $30 million grant. And whether you believe that Common Core should be illegal in this state or not, it is illegal. So here he's got $30 million that he's going to bring to the state of Texas that the federal government says if you use this money, you have to teach Common Core. So what's he going to do? And he said, well, you know, I don't really have to do that. And we said, well, yeah, you do. You're either lying to the state or you're lying to the feds. So that's the kind of thing we're seeing. We've got another school coming in from California that they have just blatantly, their curriculum blatantly looks Common Core to me. And it's an embedded strategy. I mean, our TEKS they are good, solid instructional TEKS. And Common Core to me, the reason that I didn't like it, and this is a simple way to think about it, it makes everybody common. There's no challenge in there to the students. And I'm just a little bit afraid that we're starting to see some of that creep in because Texas has become such a good state for charter schools to come into that they're starting to take advantage of us. And that's why I want to be sure that we watch that.
Oh, Pam, I'm Richard Caron. Several years ago, I was down in Austin and helped review proposed textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the SBOE still comes up with a list of textbooks that are approved, I understand that the local school systems can throw that out and get whatever they want, and what sense does that make?
That's right. They can do that now. I agree. What sense does it make? And what the local districts have to do is they have to certify that they're teaching 100% of the TEKS. But that doesn't mean that they have to use instructional materials that teach 100% of the TEKS. For instance, there was a very popular reading program that was not on the state list. It was Fontes and Pinella, and it was leveled reading. And they got 20% of the state's business without even being on the state board's list. And you know, they may have, I don't know, 60, 70% of the TEKS. So that means that this district has to go find another instructional material to fill in that gap of 30% of the TEKS, which by law they are supposed to do, and they do. Their state board, their school board has to sign a certification that the TEKS are being met 100%. Really? And one thing the commissioner did that I really kind of disagreed with is he created this open resource materials, which is a lot of online stuff. And I just really almost cringe, you know, when you think about some of the things that are out there online. So I think I would love to see it get back to the state board having the approval that the money comes from the state, and that's what the districts have to use it for. I have a feeling that if it's a lean year and they've gotten money for, say, spelling books, and they say, well, you know, do we really need those new spelling books? Let's take that money and let's buy the football team new uniforms. So that's where we are with it now, and unfortunately that's what happened with Senate Bill 6 in 2011.
We can do one more question? Okay, here we go.
Should I run to you? Thanks for your service, Pam. Coming into the meeting, there were 3 options that were discussed about which way the bill could go or how the legislation could go to stop CRT. If you could, I'd love to hear you opine a little bit on where that is, where you think that's going. And then also, you mentioned the licensing of, or the license that teachers have to teach the curriculum. So CRT could be prevalent across subject matter. How will you enforce this law against, teachers out there doing this?
Well, it's kind of like I gave the example of the speed limit. You can't enforce it until you get caught. And, when they close the door, they can probably do pretty much what they want to. What I would love to see happen to get us a stronger bill is that the governor says, okay, I'm going to sign this bill, but I promise you, I'm going to bring it back and we're going to make it a stronger bill. To me, that is the best solution. If he doesn't bring it back in a special session, then it's going to be open for any. We can keep it out of the social studies standards, and by law, teachers should not be allowed to teach it. But once again, they close that door. Who knows?
Before we finish our program, I'd like to say a word about Pam. She will be running in the next election. You heard her say how the Republican majority is dwindling. So have a good look at Pam Little and remember
call your
that
friends in
name.
Dallas County.
And I'm making an appeal for you to vote, and don't stop at the top. Go all the way down and keep her in, because if she doesn't stay in, I hate to think what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I always love coming out here, and thank y'all very much.
Okay, it's time for education proof here. If you're here tonight and you have a name tag, behind your name tag, there is a number. It's a ticket. And if you have an interest in winning 3 of the drawings, you need to look at those numbers when I pull them out. And Kayla will give me the first one. The first one is a gift card for Two Rose Dining, thanks to Wayne Brooks, who was here at our last meeting. And this number is 294-403. $294-403. Okay? Yeah, we need some classes in dyslexia here. Okay, this one, the last 3 numbers are 441. Bam. Thank you, Pam. Okay, the next will be the heirloom collection of note cards from Jim Struble, who has presented these to us as a prize. So we're going to draw number 460. Hey, Bob. There you go. Bob Nichols. Thank you. I didn't check it, so. Okay, here we go. This is for those handyman and those plant women. Home Depot card here. and the number is 408. Over here. Thank you. Thank you. It's correct. Okay. And with that, thank you all, and Jack.
Okay, we are moving right along here today, or tonight I should say. So what we're going to talk about here is our upcoming agenda. Okay. It doesn't want to stay there. Upcoming events. Okay, so we have the Collin County Lincoln Day Forum and Dinner coming up. It's the big fundraiser for the county political GOP, and that will be July 17th. If you will check our website, we have information on this. There's an afternoon luncheon and then a dinner meeting that evening. So there'll be plenty of information for you on that subject. The Republican Club monthly dinner, our next dinner will be Monday night, July the 19th. And the subject will be the Texas Grid. So several weeks ago, our friends from the Democratic Party had David McGinnis here to talk about the operation of the Grayson Collin County facility. That's where our power comes from. Jason Isaacs is part of the team, the strategy team that gives direction to the facilities on what they can do. Will we have rolling brownouts this summer? The facility in Grayson Collin County has to follow the guidelines that are set up through ERCOT. So the fellow that will be here, Jason Isaacs, will be talking about the new strategy that's in place. Several, I think you know, there's been a considerable changing of the guard at ERCOT. Several of the key executives have lost their job. This fella will be able to talk to what the plan is, how the plan was developed, and what we can expect going forward. So we've had a lot of contact with him. We think you're going to really appreciate this information. It tells us all something about what we can look forward to going forward. No more, hopefully no more Februaries and the experiences that we had then, and we are concerned about this summer. Yes, Henry?
Y'all are in Grayson County here, but I'm on Encore on the other side of town. And Encore came out today with a turn your temperature up 2 or 3 degrees, shut your blinds. They're worried about rolling brownouts already.
Okay, so that should be enough motivation for us all to be here next month and see what's going on. Finally, we have our annual golf tournament to support the Collin County GOP. That will be on September the 10th here at Heritage Ranch, and a lot more information on that subject to follow. Okay, I need more training on how to. Okay, so earlier tonight when we first started speaking, we told you that we really want to hear from you on how to make our program better, how to make certain that we are doing all the right things to make this program worthwhile for each and every one of you. So one of the ways you can do that is by talking to us. So if you see any of the board members walking around with their dog in the neighborhood like me, stop us and tell us what you think. But if you don't see that, or you prefer not to do that, you can go to our website and ask any question you want. And our webmaster, Georgina, will take that question and make sure you get the answer. So that's the right way to get the questions and answers. We listen to everything you tell us. We try really hard, and we think we're getting better at this, to do the things that you want us to do. So and see, that's where we are. It's 8 o'clock, and we're finishing 30 minutes early, but we can't finish the meeting tonight without acknowledging the wonderful presentation by Pam Little. We learned a lot. We know, the most important thing in our minds today is what our grandkids are being taught and their future. That's what it's all about for us now. So thank you, Pam, for providing those insights. And with that, I will tell you that we're going to finish this meeting early, like we promised. So please have a good and safe evening. Thank you very much for coming. Hope to see you next month.